What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to focus on one specific element in XDefiant that's going to help you win a whole lot more gunfights if you aren't already taking advantage of this, and this is strafing. So we're going to be going into great detail with the strafe speeds of the guns, as well as the various attachments that improve your strafe speeds, how other attachments may or may not impact your strafe speeds, since this part isn't quite obvious and I was actually a bit surprised by the results that I found here, and how to best take advantage of this to ensure that you're winning even more gunfights. But before we get into all the specifics with the strafe speeds and the attachments and how they impact things, let's just talk about strafing in general within the context of XDefiant. In this game, strafing is even more important, I would say, than most other FPS games on the market. And one of the biggest reasons behind this is in XDefiant, you can change direction basically on a dime. There's not much inertia there, where as you try to change direction while strafing back and forth, many games have a little bit of a deceleration and then an acceleration again when you go the opposite direction. And there's not much of that at all in XDefiant, and this can make it incredibly hard for even decent enemies to hit their shots against you, especially when you're using the right attachments to maximize your aim down sight strafe speeds. Now on top of that, strafing doesn't just help with evasion in a gunfight and making it hard for the enemy to hit you, it can actually help with your aim as well. One of the best ways to make fine adjustments to your aim, especially on a controller, is with what's called left stick aiming. So instead of just using that right analog stick to turn your aim left and right, you're also moving your body left or right to make those fine adjustments to your aim. And it's actually a lot smoother and a lot easier to make those fine adjustments when doing this with your left stick rather than your right stick. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that you should never use your right stick to aim. Of course, you're going to have to use that as well. I just want to mention that you should be trying to incorporate that left stick aiming as well. Additionally, focusing on the controller side of things, when you strafe in a gunfight, just like with Call of Duty, this is what activates your rotational aim assist. So it's actually going to help you stay on target by strafing compared to standing still. If you just stand still and have your feet planted in a gunfight, it's going to be much harder to hit your target because you won't be getting that same type of assistance as if you were strafing back and forth. So those are the primary benefits and the reason that strafing is so incredibly important in this game, especially on controller, but honestly, even with mouse and keyboard, it's very important to be strafing in gunfights as well. And that covers it for the basics of why you should be strafing in gunfights. Now, I know this isn't some revolutionary idea for this game. Good players have known that strafing is very important since the early betas of the game. It was pretty obvious right from the beginning that strafing was a very powerful method of winning gunfights. But when I'm playing, I really don't see that many people taking advantage of this, so I thought I'd spread the word a little bit and show you guys just how important this is to help you improve your gameplay within XDefiant. And with that out of the way, now let's move into our aim down sight strafe speeds with the various guns in the game. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this is what I'm going to be showing is your aim down sight forward speed, so how quickly you can move forwards when aiming down sights. But just know, when strafing side to side, you actually lose 10% to this movement speed, and that's just something that's built into the game. So in the assault rifle category, you can see all of the assault rifles, with one exception, will have an aim down sight strafe speed of about 2.94 meters per second. And then the MDR, which is kind of meant to be an assault rifle SMG hybrid, this actually has SMG level strafe speeds at 3.04 meters per second, so it is noticeably faster. Next, with the SMGs, most of them have that same strafe speed as the MDR at 3.04 meters per second. However, the P90 actually has the fastest aim down sight strafe speed by default in the SMG category at 3.13 meters per second. But there's a reason for this, and this is with the P90, we don't have access to the stock attachments, and the lightweight stock on the other guns, that's one that gives you the biggest boost to your aim walking speed. So at the end of the day, when we're looking at aim down sight strafe speed potential with attachments, the P90 is actually going to be noticeably worse than the other SMGs. It's just better out of the box. But then let's move on to LMGs, which are of course noticeably slower than assault rifles. However, it is worth noting the RPK-74 is a bit better than the others in the movement speed department. It's a similar story with the marksman rifles, definitely noticeably slower than both assault rifles and SMGs. And somewhat surprisingly, shotguns are right around that level as well, basically the same as marksman rifles, so aim down sight strafing isn't as effective with those. Although I should mention, it's not like it's completely non-viable, these just aren't really going to excel as much as something like an SMG or an assault rifle. After that, for sniper rifles, it's not even really worth considering. Strafing with sniper rifles is generally not going to be all that effective. And then for sidearms, we have the best aim walking speeds out of the box with all of these. They range from 3.29 meters per second up to 3.4 meters per second. But with most of these, we won't have a ton of different attachment options to improve our aim walking speed. Aside from the 93R, this one actually has a good selection of attachments, including a lightweight stock, so you can get pretty crazy when it comes to aim walking speed. Next, let's have a look at the attachments that improve our aim walking speed, and there are three primary attachments to be looking at that apply to most of the guns in the game, but there are some exceptions, like I mentioned, like with the P90, for instance, we don't have access to the stock that helps with this. But with these, for our underbarrels, we have the leather wrapped foregrip, which will improve our ADS walking speed by 15%. For our rear grips, we have the leather wrapped rear grip, which is going to improve our aim walking speed by 10%. And then finally, in the stock section, we have the lightweight stock, which gives us a 20% boost to our aim walking speed. And it turns out with all of these, they are of course stackable, and just like with all of the other attachments that I've tested so far, they're additive. So if you stack all 3 of these together, you're actually going to see a 45% increase to your aim walking speed, which is pretty crazy, and that's where a lot of the power comes out, is when you stack all 3 of these together. You'll be zipping back and forth like crazy. And a quick note on that, something I want to point out is in first person, it might not look that crazy, strafing back and forth with these stacked on your gun, but just trust the fact that from a third person perspective, for the enemy players, it looks way crazier than it does from your perspective. I wish we had custom games so I could show this off in a controlled environment, but unfortunately at this point we don't. So just know, for enemy players, this effect is greatly exaggerated compared to what you're seeing on your screen. Now, one question you might have is, of course, we can stack these 3 main attachments to improve our ADS walking speed, but can we take that even further by adding even more attachments that help with our movement speed stat? Not our ADS movement speed, but just our movement speed stats. Because in most FPS games, when you have something that says it improves your movement speed, that's going to apply to all of your movement speed values, whether you're sprinting, walking, aim down sight walking, crouching. Well, in XDefiant, unfortunately, it doesn't work quite like that. Any attachment that states that it helps your movement speed, this has no impact on your aim down sight movement speed. It definitely helps your standard walking speed and your sprint speed, but it just has no impact whatsoever on your aim down sight strafe speed. So don't bother with those if you're just going for like peak ADS strafe speed. You're likely better off just spending that attachment slot elsewhere. And there we go, that wraps it up for the attachments and how they impact our aim down sight strafe speed. Next, I've got a big tip for you guys here when it comes to strafing to get the most out of strafing in a gunfight. It is worth noting in this game that the recoil for almost all of the guns in the game will kick upward and to the right. And knowing this fact means that it's generally better to favor strafing toward the right in a gunfight rather than the left, because from the mirrored perspective of the enemy player, their recoil is kicking upward and to your left. So strafing away from their recoil is just going to make it that much more difficult to not only control the recoil, but also overcompensate for controlling recoil in order to track you while you're strafing. Now, in saying that, obviously every situation is going to be different, and some situations will call for strafing left instead of right, and many times you want to be strafing back and forth in a gunfight, so you're throwing them off so they overcompensate and aim past you as you're strafing in one direction and then suddenly changing to the next direction. But this is just one of those little things where if you're trying to squeeze the most out of it, if you find yourself in a situation where maybe you're in the open and you have that choice to start strafing either left or right, it's best to get into that habit of strafing to the right rather than the left. And there we go. That is going to wrap it up for today's video, talking all about aim down sight strafing in XDefiant. In my opinion, when we're looking at attachments for regular guns, we're not talking about like sniper rifles, but like assault rifles and SMGs, for instance. In my opinion, this is the #1 most important stat to be trying to improve. It's far more important than trying to get your recoil under control, because recoil is really basic in this game, and that recoil recovery stat is totally useless. Also, I did recently make a video talking about the attachments that improve our rate of fire, and while those are great attachments as well, I would argue that strafing faster in a gunfight is even more important than slightly improving our time to kill potential with those. So if you're somebody that hasn't really played around with this yet and hasn't really tried to take advantage of strafing in gunfights, next time you hop on XDefiant, I highly encourage you to pop on these aim down sight strafe speed attachments and just make a serious effort to integrate strafing into every gunfight that you possibly can. I think for many of you guys that haven't been taking advantage of this yet, you're going to find that you're winning so many more gunfights than you were winning before you tried this. And with that, this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How do you feel about the current state of strafing in XDefiant, as well as the strafing attachments? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.